Now that we've seen how an action works in ServiceNow, the next thing I want to do is show you the concept of subflows and flows. So we're going to go ahead and create a subflow that's going to use the action that we were just looking at, as well as take some additional steps that might be worthwhile. So we're going to call this particular subflow demo subflow capability, and I'm just going to copy that subflow name to the description. Not important here. I'm going to make sure my application stays in the global space. I don't want to add anything into the Jira application spoke. And then we're going to make sure, I'm not going to put any protection on this, but we can use some categories to group our subflows, and as we reuse them, we want to be able to find them. So that's what that's there for. We'll go ahead and submit. And this example I'm going to do, basically what I want to do in the subflow is that I want to create an issue in Jira, but in addition to creating an issue, I want to put a comment on the issue in Jira saying that it was created from ServiceNow, and then I want to log in ServiceNow so I have an audit trail that an issue was created in Jira for whatever workflow that called it. So that's 3 steps that we're going to put into the subflow, and we'll be able to use those in any workflow. So if I had 10 workflows that all needed to create issues, they could call the subflow, and we're only going to ask them for 3 pieces of information. You saw in the action there was 7 pieces of information that it needs in order to process it, but it doesn't need 7, just the mandatory ones. So you see the project key, the summary, the issue type is required, and the priority. We're just going to pass 3 things. We're going to pass the summary, the description, actually, and that's it, just 2 things. We're going to pass 2 variables, summary and description, and we're going to put the project key within the subflow so that people who are using the subflow don't need to know the project key. It's not really something that's visible. People just know their project names in Jira. So let's go ahead and set up those inputs. We'll do summary, and that'll stay a string, and we will make that mandatory because we need that, and description. And that'll be mandatory as well because we need that in order to complete our flow. The next thing we need to do is pass back any outputs that came from that action. So we definitely want to pass the status, the error message, and the issue ID back to the workflow that calls the subflow that we're creating. So let's go ahead and specify those outputs now. Status, and I'll have to look again. Status, error message, and issue ID. And I'll just copy that over here, and we'll add one more. The issue ID is the ID of the issue in Jira, of course. There. We've got all our inputs and outputs defined, and now we can get started on creating the actual steps in this particular subflow. The first one is going to be, we're going to create that issue in Jira, and to do that, we're going to use the Jira spoke. So hop over there to Jira, and there should be a create issue action that we can use. Now you can hover over these little icons to see information about how to use them, what input is required, what error messages you might receive. I'm going to click on it, and it's going to bring up a small little form that has those inputs that we saw that were defined in the action. So this is what it looks like on the other side when you start using it. So we're going to use the connection that I've already pre-configured that connects to the ServiceNow or Jira instance. We're going to select the project key. I'm going to use my demo one. Then I'm going to pick a particular task type, or issue type. So notice this actually came from that project. So if you have any projects over there, you can get them. We're going to create a task. And for my summary, that came as an input. So notice above my head on the right hand side here, I have my summary and I have my description. So I'm going to click and drag the little data pill over to summary. Same with description, done. So no matter what calls this, I'm going to just pass on through the summary and description and create that issue. We won't set a priority on this one, we'll just let it stay to the default. Done. Now I've created my issue. Next, I want to create a comment. I want to put on that issue that I created in Jira, just as an example for kind of chaining a couple steps together. Let's add a comment to that particular one. So add comment. When we add a comment, one of the inputs that's going to be required is the issue ID. Well, guess what? We know the issue ID because we just created it here, and now we have access to all the data elements that are part of that issue being created. So let's go ahead and drag over the issue ID. And the comment we might want to add is, this issue was a task, I think, so we'll say this task was created by ServiceNow. Done. Now I've got that documented, and I've got my issue, or my my task will have a comment added to it. Last thing I want to show, just as another step, if you wanted to do it, in the ServiceNow system, I can log messages. Those messages can be informational, they can be warnings, they can be errors. This will be informational, but you can see there the different options. And we're going to say issue, and we'll go ahead and say the issue ID was created in Jira. Done. So we've documented that particular issue number in our logs for the ServiceNow platform, that was done. The last thing we need to do when setting up a subflow is assign the outputs. So in the beginning, we actually specified we're going to do a status, error message, and issue ID as the output of the subflow for whatever workflow calls this. So the last thing is some flow logic to assign subflow outputs. And it's just above my head here, there's a little plus sign. You can see it right there. We're just going to go ahead and add those outputs. We'll do status, and that's going to come from over here. Status, we'll just drop that over. We'll add another one for error message, and we'll just grab the error message, drag it over. And the last one is going to be the issue ID. And so we grab our issue ID right here, drag it over, and click done. And that's it. So we go ahead and save our subflow, and we're going to test it after we save it to make sure it's working like it's supposed to. So go ahead and click test, and we're going to say, let's just say testing subflow capability with Jira. Paste that down here to the description and run the test. And once that runs, we should see a issue get created in Jira, the comment get added, and we can move on to do our workflow. So I'll hop over here to Jira. I'm looking at all my issues. I'll just go ahead and refresh and see if we've got that one. There it is, testing subflow capability with Jira. Open that up. And here we've got our description, or our summary, our description, just like we did it. There's the comment that got automatically added. So our subflow is working like we want it, and now we're ready to move on to the workflow piece.